Hello, Assalamu alaikum everybody. Hope you're all safe, sound, and healthy. And we really need to talk about the situation out there in the Western countries, especially and in Pakistan. Yes, few comments. Okay, I won't, dive deep into the whole thing because, as I've repeatedly said that in almost all my podcast episodes, I have every now and then touched upon the subject of the of history, of misinformation, of false narratives. And I really would advise that people should brush up on their general knowledge, because see, as I said, one of the worst things about the Western world is that despite the fact that they are under this delusion that they are free, they are actually the most enslaved people in the world, actually, if you come to think of it. The Western public, the Western mass, the Western people, they have no idea about anything at all. And it is, you can see it is just being displayed right now. Their ignorance is full on being displayed currently, even as we speak, whether it's the matter of the British riots, whether it's the matter of the Americans, whether it's the matter of Palestine, whether it's the matter of, really it doesn't matter really, whether it's India, whether it's Pakistan, whether it's Afghanistan. The amount of illiteracy in the Western world is mind boggling. I mean, considering the fact that you literally stole from us, the Muslims, every single thing you could in order to develop yourselves as a country, as a society. You even took the Umayyad system, the Islamic system, the Muhammadan system. You took the Sharia and you're, bitching about Sharia and you're talking smack about Muslims and Islam, keeping your mass ignorant of the fact that they're literally being brought up in an Islamic society, without even their knowledge. I think that the time and again I have always referenced to this fact, and I've kept on and on, referencing to it with the Western public, that police at least to know where you're coming from, at least know how you reached this point that you're at today. You keep on talking about your countries as if your countries are ideal countries, and because they're not Muslim countries. But the truth is, your countries are ideal countries despite not being Muslim countries, because you have adopted the Islamic system, okay, like it or not. And this is something that I would again repeat I'll just keep on repeating myself like a parrot here. This is something that every single person who has anything to do with the constitution, to do with the law, to do with the infrastructure, to do with public management, to do with the whole, caboodle, anything to do with the government sector in any of these Western countries, and all of these Western countries, is fully aware, because you have to study. You have to study about it. You have to know where your system comes from, and how it's implemented and what's the foundation of your system, but to deliberately keep your masses unaware of the fact that they are literally, being cradled in the Islamic system, that they're growing up in the Islamic system, that they're living, breathing, implementing the Islamic system, despite the fact that they claim to be secular, or they claim to be, atheist, or they claim to be whatever. The sheer ignorance, I mean, it just shows how brainwashed, how enslaved the Western mass is, and how easily swayed they are. As I've said it before, and I'll say it again, take Iraq for an example. They lied to the public about Iraq, and then they bombed Iraq, they stole from Iraq, they killed the then president of Iraq, and at the end of the day, they looted the country, which was the actual purpose. They went there to loot the country. They did the same in Afghanistan. They did the same, with Bosnia. The genocide in Bosnia. America's government was hands on, behind it. So was the UK. It's only when the world suddenly woke up to the fact that they suddenly, decided to throw the Serbs under the bus and pretended as if they had nothing to do with anything. And they're doing it again. They're doing it in Palestine, where, well, now they're not even bothering to hide the fact, because they created that false anti Muslim Islamophobic narrative. And that is why, it's so easy for them to control the Western public. So, the Western public, they seem to live under this delusion that they are free, they're independent, they have their freedom, they know how to think, but no, they're dependent on their government's narrative, they're dependent on the system. They have no clue. They have no freaking clue. They have no freaking idea of why it is that they are where they are today. Why is it that their governments have managed to secure their countries into developed countries? How is it that they reached from the dark ages to this far? I mean, you need to remember that the very Muslims that you're cussing at are the fundamental base behind every modern civilization's progress. Be it science, be it arts, be it math. Medieval Muslim scientists, mathematicians, geologists, these are the ones that your scientists, who you refer to as father of this and father of that, this is also, again, misinformation, false narrative. None of the white scientists and mathematicians are fathers of anything. They've literally just learned from the medieval Muslim scholars, and then they plagiarized their work, and then they added a little more to their, some of those who had a conscience, they decided to work a little more and extend some more research to the topic. And even today, every scientist has to still work with the original works of the medieval Muslim scientists in order to make any progress. You always have to go back to basics in order to learn to make more progress. And so they still have to refer to those medieval books when they're doing their PhDs, when they're into academics, when they're into research field, when they're in their labs, when they're, it doesn't matter what capacity they're in. As long as you are in a certain field, you have to go back to the original basics. You have to go back to the first book ever written, the first research ever made, so that you can understand how to make more progress. So, yeah, none of your people were fathers of this or fathers of that. They were just, sons at best, for the lack of a better word. Fathers, no. Even the Wright brothers. The Wright brothers were not the first people to fly. It's on the record. Again, the first person to have, tested and actually succeeded in flight was a Muslim. So, and this is something that I have literally named names on my social media, on Facebook and all, where I've literally named names of those people who were the real fathers of all these science and technology and geology and astronomy and all of it, and math and physics and medicine, cameras, even camera, the convex and the concave lens, the whole concept of it, it's all the pioneers, the true pioneers. Even if you go, this is something that I've even mentioned in my novel, The Mist series, and which, when we've touched upon the original status of Illuminati, what Illuminati was when it actually began, now it's become this whole twisted political conspiracy, whatever you like to call it. It's become, Freemasons 2.0 on, on a new high. But actually, the Illuminati were just, scientists who were being persecuted by the priests, by the Roman Church. And when they were being persecuted, basically they were learning from Muslim scientists of that time, and they were collaborating with them, and they were, whenever they made a little bit of progress in that research, then they would again go back to them, in order to, touch base. And they called themselves the Illuminati because that meant the enlightened ones. So they were literally scientists who were fleeing persecution at the hands of the Romans, you know. So when you look at it that way, and if you also think, you know, about how the scientists and why they called themselves the Illuminati and what the original point of the Illuminati was. You know, they just wanted to make, they wanted to be able to, you know, enlighten their own people as well. And because remember, again, let me remind you, the Western world was living in the dark ages. They were barbarians, basically. They were also what we refer to as land pirates, sea and land pirates. I mean, they literally just stole wherever they went. They looted and plundered, and they had nothing of their own. They still have nothing of their own. And so this is why you need to listen carefully to this piece that I'm reiterating of history, because this is what we're going to touch upon when we talk about the immense stupidity and ignorance and enslavement, the enslaved minds, the brainwashed minds of the Western public, that the Muslims were at the zenith. Okay, I mean, remember the Muslim empire, the Muslim countries, they were the developed countries of their time. And the Western world was completely engulfed in dark ages, in pagan practices, in superstitions, you know, and they, when they found this new world where everybody was, you know, successful, and, you know, there was prosperity, and, you know, and again, remember, India was never one country. All this will link up, okay? So India was never one country. India was multiple warring states that were constantly at war with each other. That's what warring states means, okay? They were constantly at war with each other. And it was not until the Muslims, when they came and they put India together as one whole, it was not until then that it was made possible. Before that, it wasn't even possible for India to be India. India was made into India by the Muslim rulers. And this is again a feat which the British, the Portuguese, all of them put together couldn't accomplish. And they failed miserably. And that shows that not only did they divide India from within when they sneaked in as you know, East India Trading Company or whatever they called themselves. Who cares, really? But the point is that when they came like that, pretending to be traders, and then they sneaked in, and like cowards, like hyenas, they were, you know, they wanted to find out what made this country, you know, the golden bird, and or the golden sparrow, and how can we steal all of that and make it ours. Well, you know what made it the golden sparrow? It was the fact that the Muslim rulers used the resources of that country on that country to make it prosperous. They didn't steal all the resources and send it back home. No, they used those resources to develop the country. That is why it became a rich and prosperous country. And so I guess you never got that answer, showing how stupid and morons you were, that you literally went in, sneaked in like hyenas, and started creating, you know, isolating certain prey, and then, you know, turning them into carcasses. So you divided and ruled, basically, because you didn't know how to rule a whole entire India. No, opposite, contrary to the Muslim rulers, who wherever they went, they just joined people up into one nation. Contrary to that, the Europeans, wherever they went, they had to divide people because that was the only way they could rule them. And so they failed miserably in keeping and maintaining that united India. And when they left, India broke again. And again, if it wasn't for the centuries-old unition by the Muslims, India would have broken into a million more pieces. But somehow it managed to keep together. And that is why in India, there are still so many states within India that do not accept the Indian government. They do not accept India as their country. We have Assam, we have Bihar, we have Punjab, we have Kashmir. Well, Kashmir obviously was never part of India anyway. This was supposed to be a completely separate state that was cheated. It was cheated on by the British. So wherever the British went, not only did they fail to keep that country united after dividing it in order to rule it, they broke that country up, yes, after leaving, but not only that, they kept on stealing resources from that country. And that is why those countries that the Europeans conquered, those countries were conquered because they were the richest countries. And they were powerful countries. They were the developed countries of their time. They were the enlightened countries. And they were mostly under Muslim rule. Most of those developed countries were under the Muslim rule. And when the British took over all those countries and occupied them, again in a cowardly manner, not in a courageous manner, again contrary to how the Muslims conquered lands, they sent letters and they waged wars. But the British, they sneaked in like hyenas. Not just the British, the Portuguese, the Dutch, the Italians, the Spanish. They sneaked in like cowards. They literally divided those countries because they could never handle them as a whole. And then they left them broken to smithereens after stealing from them. And as if that wasn't enough, now here is where we're also coming to our next point. As if that wasn't enough, you're still stealing from us. You're still stealing from us. Not only did you take the Islamic system, implement it in your society after learning the secret. Yeah, you learned the secret of those developed countries, and that was the system. So you stole the system. Fine, you can have the system. You're most welcome to use it. But the worst part was, not only did you take the system, you stole our resources. Again, you not just stole our resources, but you're still stealing our resources. And you are still not allowing us to maintain our system. So you took the system for us because you found out that it was the key to success, that was the secret to success. And so in order to make sure that we did not go back to success, you have ensured by putting your own people, treacherous minions in all those colonies to ensure that the Islamic system is never fully brought back into these post-colonial Muslim countries so that they should be forever riddled in chaos. Why? Because the British, the French, the Italians, they never really left. No, they never wanted to leave. They just superficially on the surface they left, but they kept a hold on all. This is how they're keeping a hold on all of these countries, by ensuring that the right person, the person who has the interest of the country at heart, does not come. And if he does come, then he should be removed. And that is exactly what they did with Imran Khan. Imran Khan was a pain to the British establishment, the American establishment, the European establishment, because he wanted Pakistan to be completely independent, completely removed from them, from their interference and influence. And that is why he was a thorn in their paw, and so he needed to be removed. And also he was working towards the unison of all the Muslim countries, once again, the Muslim Ummah. And the Muslim Ummah is the one thing that the Europeans never want joined together. They never want the Muslim Ummah to be one. That is their biggest fear, actually. So this is why they keep on, spreading false narratives against Muslims. And again, here we come back to how enslaved and brainwashed and stupid and ignorant their masses are, that the British public that was intent on going against their government, you know, with regards to the ongoing genocide in Palestine. They want their government to not be in favor of Israel, to not fund Israel, to not be with Israel. So, what did the government do? The government very neatly created a situation. They created, a multiple murder incident where a teenage boy was said to have gone and killed three girls. And then, they created such kind of incidents, and then they very neatly on social media spread misinformation, absolute lies. And it shows, again, this is where again I'm going to say, it shows the ignorance, the stupidity, and how easy it is to sway the British public, because they are in fact inherently enslaved already and brainwashed. So it was so easy for them to divert the public towards, away from them and towards another problem, where they spread a lie that there was a Pakistani, that it was a Pakistani boy who did it. And later on, when they found out that it wasn't even a Pakistani boy, it was one of their own. It was one of their own. And so instead of backing down and apologizing for attacking Muslims, attacking Pakistanis, attacking Indians, but especially attacking Pakistanis. So, and because this time the Pakistanis were not having it, and the Pakistanis retaliated, and they protested, the Pakistanis, they stood together, they stood united, and they protested against the whole thing, against the violent attacks, on... Sorry, and I got interrupted by a call. I think the call came in through the recording, I'm not sure. But I had to hit pause, and now, as usual, I've kind of blanked out on what I was saying, although I remember the points of the podcast, but I have sort of blanked out on what exactly I was saying to connect. But anyway, I think I was talking about the enslaved minds of the British, right? I mean, as I said, look, the British people were going against their government for being on the wrong side of history all over again, and for not just funding but actually supporting and masterminding the Palestinian genocide. And then the government decided, oh hey, you know what, let's divert the attention here, let's do the smoke and mirrors thing, misdirection. So they created this whole false narrative that a Pakistani attacked a few girls. And suddenly, without verifying, without confirming, without anything, they attacked Pakistanis, who in turn retaliated because it was false news. And then, as I said, even though the Pakistanis were proved right, and that it was proved to have been false news, it was actually one of their own people who did the whole thing. And Pakistanis had nothing to do with it. Muslims had nothing to do with it. Instead of backing off and apologizing, they just blustered their way through. It's like, you're the perp, and instead of apologizing, instead of backing off, you're just going on with more force. So now there's this situation created where the British keep on again, displaying their ignorance in their behavior towards Muslims and towards Pakistanis. Because again, number one, nothing in Britain is earned. Nothing in Britain is earned by the British government or the British establishment or the British people. It's stolen. Even your museums, even your freaking museums do not hold a single piece of history that belongs to the British themselves. Everything is stolen, mainly from us, from all the time to Sher Shah Suri onwards, including the Kohinoor diamond that the Queen is wearing. On what grounds? Seriously, on what grounds? It should be returned. And again, if there's any, again, the ignorance of the British. I remember there was a British who commented somewhere. There was a post, which is a very apt post. This is something that, in fact, we always say amongst ourselves too. So it's a very universal post. And that post said something like, the only reason there are pyramids in Egypt is because the white man couldn't carry them. It was too heavy for him to carry off. And the British, it stung them. It stung them really bad. You didn't even leave the dead bodies. I mean, seriously, who the hell are you trying to argue with over here? It is a fact that the only reason the pyramids are in Egypt is because, yes, you couldn't steal them too. Otherwise, you have stolen everything from the dead bodies to the treasures in those pyramids. And you haven't returned anything to date, neither the bodies nor the treasures. You haven't returned. How many years have passed since you last stole everything in the name of research? And why isn't it returned? Similarly, all the stuff, all the treasures that were plundered from Iraq and Afghanistan by America, why isn't it returned? You look at the French. The French are still stealing from Africa. Africa is actually the richest continent, thank you very much, but the false narrative that you keep on building about Africa amongst your people as the poorest continent, you're wrong. It is one of the richest. Together with Asia, Asia and Africa are extremely rich, and everybody's trying to steal from us. We're not saying that it's only the white people. When it comes to eyeing people's wealth and resources, you've got China too, by the way. For example, now China already stole more gold than they were allowed to. We actually, if you remember the Reko Diq case, where China was allowed to dig up as much gold and minerals and resources as it wanted to, only from a certain limited area in Pakistan. But it went far ahead. And the only reason America sided with Pakistan was obviously because it was in favor of American interests that China doesn't get any more. But now Saudi is also eyeing our Reko Diq and saying, oh, you know what, all the copper and the gold that you have, sell it to us and we'll pay you. Everybody wants something from us. In Africa, you're stealing their diamonds. That wasn't enough. You're stealing their minerals. You're stealing. I mean, look at the mines. How the huge scandal of the mines, of cobalt mines, of what you're doing with the kids over there. And how France is still stealing from Africa, from Tunisia, from Algeria, from Morocco. It hasn't left any country alone. I mean, look at even look at Niger, look at Kenya. It's just not leaving any country alone. So tell me, what is it, on what basis can you act all smug and talk about foreigners going back to their countries when, first of all, you occupied their countries? Second of all, even though you superficially left their countries, you're still occupying their countries because you're still stealing from all of them, from all of us. And number three, you haven't even returned what you stole before. So obviously, all these foreigners have the right to be on your land because now they're not even stealing it back. They're not even taking back what you owe them. They're earning and adding to your revenue. Thank you very much. While you lazy bums, you sit at home and eat benefits. Yeah, that's the core problem here. The core issue is not that you have no jobs and that the job market is saturated or whatever. The core issue was that you lazy bums, you just wanted to bum at home and get free benefits from your government. And who the hell do you think are earning those benefits for you? These foreigners who are generating revenue for your countries, actually they need and they have the right to take everything from you. But they're actually still not taking anything from you. They're adding to your revenue. They're paying taxes, which is your benefits. So you are the ones who need to get your act together. You're the ones who need to look at around you and see what your qualifications are and why your government prefers to have foreign qualified people. Heck, even your labor is more qualified than you are because these are foreign students and they are the ones generating revenue for all your retail and service industry sectors. Tell me, what the hell have you people done to contribute towards the revenue of your country? If you even look at a foreign student, they pay 9 times more, literally 9 times more than the actual fee that you lot pay in your colleges and universities. And you literally extort money from those foreign students, if you look at it, where you people pay only 1 to 2,000 pounds for your master's degree, for example. You're taking up to 11,000 pounds from foreigners, from foreign students. And from European students, you take only 3 to 5,000 pounds. So again, look who you're talking to, you know. Just look at who you are talking to. People who are superior than you in every way, and they're superior to you in every way, from their qualifications to the fact that they're adding to your revenue, to the fact that you literally cannot live. Your country will collapse. The day these foreigners leave, your country will collapse. In fact, your country is right now collapsing because a lot of these foreigners have already started leaving. Especially the Muslims who you have a problem with, they have been leaving the country in a constant steady stream because they do not like your country. They find your country insecure. They find your country basically useless, and there's no future that anybody can see there. So the Muslims would prefer to go to other more developed countries that are Muslim countries, and the non-Muslims will obviously prefer to go to other developed countries. So I mean, you know, there you are. In fact, even the Muslims will prefer to go to other developed countries, even if they're not Muslim countries, who nobody cares here at that point. Nobody ever did anyway, because as I said, at the end of the day, the whole world has adopted the Islamic system. In order to be a developed country, you have to adopt the Islamic system. All the developed countries have inherently and essentially and fundamentally adopted the Islamic system. Okay, in America they call it the Muhammadan system, in Europe they call it the Umayyad system. You know, it doesn't matter, but in the name of modernization, all the developed countries have had to adopt the Islamic system. And if you have a problem with it, you're most welcome to strip yourselves off of it. Nobody forced you to. It was considered the ideal, the best system ever, which is why it was incorporated by your establishment. While stripping us off, stripping us, the real Muslims, who actually inherited this system, stripping us off of this system and ensuring that we cannot live by this system, so that we can continue to live in chaos under them. And every time a leader comes and tries to put the ideal Islamic system in his country, your establishments, your governments interfere and topple that government off. Okay, this is the honest, bare naked truth, and you've got to live with it, whether you like it or not. It's the truth. You can try to change history as much as you can, but history cannot be changed. Similarly, you can try to change the narrative, but right now there are too many witnesses all over the world for you to be able to do that. So you could have tried to falsify the narratives concerning Palestine, and you can keep on teaching your Jews that, they're going back to their land, a land that never existed. Palestine, let's face it, always existed. Philistine, remember? Philistine, it's always existed from time immemorial. Never heard of Israel. Israel never existed. Okay? And these Jews who talk about going back to their homes are in Europe. Again, I would say what I've always said before. If you really had the guts, if you really, really had the guts, you would go and fight for your rights in Europe. You would go back to your homes in Europe because it was Europe that kicked you out. Palestine gave you refuge. Egypt gave you refuge. Syria, Lebanon, they all gave you refuge. Even the Muslim countries in Europe gave you refuge. It was the Muslims who gave you refuge. And now you're working with the same people who tortured you and killed you and committed ethnic cleansing against you and kicked you out of Europe, your own homes. Now you're working with them to do the same thing that was done to you. And you're doing it to who? None other than those who gave you refuge when you were being kicked out. So this is the height of shame for both the Jews and the Christians. Height of shame. You might have forgotten the fact that the only reason why the Jews could even live in Palestine was because it was the Muslims who kicked the so-called crusaders, the Christian crusaders, the fanatics, who even then even then victimized the Jews and kicked them out of the land and did not let them in. So when the Muslims went and kicked those crusaders out, then they let you in and gave you protection. Remember that. So it was never your land, really. It was always the Arab land, and they were the ones always protecting you. So, again, you need to get your facts straight before you just move on talking rubbish, you know. So, again, I would advise the British, who are so ignorant, and I'm shocked at the level of ignorance of the British. I'm sorry. I always knew that the Americans were pretty ignorant. I mean, they're very infamous for that. But the British, seriously, you don't even know about Pakistan and India. You don't even know the fact that Pakistan and India and Bangladesh and all of these were never one country, that it was the Muslim rulers that made them one, and you, the British, couldn't even handle that. You failed so miserably that when you left, it broke back again. So yeah, Pakistan never belonged to India. Bangladesh never belonged to India. Assam, Bihar, Kashmir never belonged to India. These were all separate states, separate ethnic states with separate ethnic groups. We in Pakistan were predominantly Aryans. Indians were predominantly Dravids, okay? And then again, you've got different ethnic groups in Assam and in Bihar, and in Bangladesh again you've got different ethnic group, and you've got a different ethnic group in Kashmir, in Gilgit-Baltistan, and so we're all, but in Pakistan, despite the fact that we are different from each other, we have one thing, that we're all predominantly Aryans. Okay, so that's why we're more or less one nation, and we've always been more or less one nation. We've always been separate. We are those people who made the Indus civilization. We are the descendants of the Indus civilization. Who are you talking to, and who are you talking about saying that Pakistan and India and Bangladesh and Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan and all these were all separate states, independent states. They were brought together by the Muslim rulers. They were kept together as one nation. They were unified by the Muslim rulers, the British, the Portuguese, all of them together in India. Imagine that even the British alone, the Muslims alone, united the whole country and kept it one for a century or more. And the British, they could not even handle that one country, that they had to divide it with Portugal and with other countries. I mean, this is the reality of the Europeans and their civilization. But don't talk to us about such kind of bullshit. First, go and get your history straight. And please, for God's sake, stop being so ignorant. Stop displaying your ignorance on the social media, for God's sake, for crying out loud. You're such idiots that you didn't even realize that your government, just to divert you from the Palestinian issue, they created this whole incident and decided, okay, let's just have a Muslim Christian rights all over again and use it to our advantage in the Palestinian issue. You morons. And this is me signing out. Khuda Hafiz.